First of all, the Euro-Mediterranean Economists Association has launched a COVID policy research initiative on 18th of March, aimed to monitor, to assess, and the evolutions and policies and propose independent economic analysis, and also to contribute to the policy discussions and actions. On the 22nd of April, we published a collaborative research on COVID-19 on the Mediterranean, north and south, and also east, but also in Africa, which offers a diagnosis, preliminary policy assessment framework, and policy recommendations for this region. So I really thank very much the co-authors of this study, Samir Abdallah, Nuh Al-Shayb, Kwame Barnier, Yassin Belarbi, Sandra Shalitan, Najat Al-Makawi, Kinga, Konya Rim Mwalhi, Rasha Ramadan, Serena Sandri, Mai Shaben, Sarah Ronco, and Shahir Zaki. Thank you very much for the proactivity on this exercise. And let me also emphasize the fact that this exercise has been done in collaboration with the Euro-Mediterranean Network for Economic Studies, which is coordinated by the Euro-Mediterranean Economists Association. I would also like to give a special thank you to Fathallah Sijilmassi and Roger Albignana for providing the forward for this study. And also our colleagues Cynthia Alcidi and Carlo Sessa for reviewing some sections in the study. So this is about the study. At the same time, what we have done, we have launched an online collaborative research platform hosted on our website, which is an open access knowledge base, which everybody can contribute. Of course, it needs to be part of the networks of EMEA and the team, and also to allow researchers to collaborate to produce independent knowledge on key areas that will be impacted by COVID-19. Such as trade policy, the notion of global value chain, the failure for the future, of the regional integration model that as we know it today, and the role of safety net, the digital economy and the social economy. All the results of this research will be published online via this platform. But at the same time, also we have developed within this study a policy assessment tool that we are still testing. So today also it's a possibility for us to discuss this assessment tool, which we have applied it on a sample of countries in Europe, Mediterranean and Africa. And we will try to enhance and then update every 3 weeks. So the updates of the last 3 weeks will be published tomorrow morning on our online platform. And the main idea of this policy assessment tool is to assess what is happening from 3 points of view or 3 dimensions. The first one is the preparedness and effectiveness of the healthcare systems within to deal with the pandemic. The second pillar is the completeness and timeliness of the policies, which are the containment policies implemented by the different governments. But also the third pillar is the comprehensiveness and the solidarity principle of the socio-economic mitigation policies. So this is extremely, at least this is what we have proposed, that could also be discussed and probably enhanced. So this webinar is the first one of a regular webinar series that we are launching, which purpose is to discuss the process of contagion in all this region, but also the policy answers in Europe, Mediterranean and Africa. And we're also trying to enhance the knowledge within these regions and providing independent analysis to help the policy processes in these countries. But also, I just wanted to inform you and to the audience that these webinars are going to be organized twice a month on Thursdays at 3 p.m. CUT for 90 minutes, which we will each time try to focus on a specific topic. I would also, again, like to thank the panelists who are joining us today. We have more now than 38 participants, so I think we can start the discussions. Let me give a few rules. So this discussion is Chatham House rules, but at the end, we are planning to publish it, to publish the discussions online. But if you have any objections for this, please let us know by email, and just we will have a written record. So this is not going to be online. So I would like to move now to the discussion. We have, as you can see, these are the panelists of today's webinar. I would like to start discussing the first thing. As you can see, we have been now in very exceptional times since March in several countries. Myself, as I mentioned, and we have been locked in Spain, some others in, some of my colleagues in Italy, others in other countries. And then obviously the economic activity has been halted. Why? Because there has been a serious trade-off by many governments, which is to save lives and to ensure that the basic economic activity remains. And we had serious problems over the last few weeks on that. And we could see it also in several countries which were pretty much struggling to find the appropriate recipe to ensure this trade-off is dealt with. So the first round of this panel discussion is to discuss the process of contagion, but also the responses of the governments and in terms of containment and mitigation. And how do you see, from your own point of view, you know, the process, and how do you see the deconfinement, and whether there are risks from deconfining too early?
Well, thank you very much, Rim. First of all, I'd like to express my gratitude to EMEA for this very kind invitation. Especially, I would like to thank and praise the work done by the researchers of the study in putting up so much valuable information in such a short period of time, because most European countries, the pandemic spread in mid-March, and the study was ready in only 3 weeks since then. So congratulations to all of you. As you very well know, Spain has been going through, alongside other countries in Europe, a very difficult period since the pandemic started. The death toll per capita of the COVID-19 in Spain is the highest in the world, with nearly 52 deaths per group of 100,000 inhabitants. And I have to underline that this figure is higher than other very heat countries like Italy and the United Kingdom. The good news, though, is that the effective reproduction number of the virus is below 1 since April 25th in the most heat regions of the country. Of course, this is very good news, because it means that unless we witness an upsurge in the upcoming weeks, we are slowly moving towards the gradual lifting of containment measures, which will probably begin next Monday. Probably not in the whole territory of Spain, but in some of the parts. The reason why in some countries we were surprised by this public health crisis has to do with the low degree of preparedness and also with the late response of the lockdown measures. I mean, I think that this has been very well described in the report. Here, for instance, we can see that Greece activated the harsh lockdown measures much earlier than other countries, and the results are much better at the moment. Now, of course, we are beginning to suffer the economic downturn, which is going to be very severe, I must say. In the worst years of the financial crisis and the sovereign debt crisis of 2008 to 2013, Spain's aggregate output never fell behind minus 3.6%. However, the forecasted figures for this year project that the Spanish economy will contract by more than 9%. This is the worst figure since 1939, at the end of the Spanish Civil War, while also the public deficit will increase to more than 10% of GDP. And even if the economy will reboot in 2021, as it has been forecasted, the recovery will not be completed by the end of 2021, and we also need to be aware of that. This gloomy picture is very scary, to be honest, very scary. So what can be done? Well, I tend to use the example of the 3 R's: recover, restart, and reinvent. As for recover and restart, if both measures are not taken, a significant part of our productive tissue will be swept away, simply like that. Nowadays, experts are thinking of range between 20 to 30% of the productive tissue. The public sector needs to continue stepping in with bold measures that go beyond the facilitation of soft credits and guarantees for the private sector. Equity participation, bailouts, extending the payment schemes for temporary unemployment, this is all needed. Otherwise, we might face a severe contraction of the labor demand. And when temporary unemployed workers wish to return to their job places, there won't be job places anymore. This 20% unemployment rate that Spain is going to face in the course of this year has to be partly reabsorbed in the next months. And this will only be achieved if the public sector sustains the productive tissue. Finally, how can we reinvent? Any crisis, no matter how deep and hard it can be, is an excuse to accelerate structural changes. In this regard, the Blue Transition Policy Roadmap, launched by EMEA a few weeks ago, offers a very timely response via the 4 transition scenarios that we would like to move in. The transitions in the area of governance, of environment, of economy, and society, with the aim to build a more responsible, sustainable, resilient, and inclusive future, are imperative to avoid repeating the same mistakes of the past. Here I have a question on how governance can be strengthened if the direction that we aim at, when the multilateral and the supranational systems are so weak. How can we effectively and transparently respond to some challenges that affect us all, when the international community and the international system is so weak? I'm sure that we will be able to discuss this point more in depth during the second round of this webinar. But international organizations are confronted at the moment with a total absence of effective tools to combat this crisis or any other crisis that might arise in the future. We are again trapped in the vicious circle of global problems that transcend the boundaries of the nation state, being tackled not by supranational frameworks, but by the nation state acting alone. And this, of course, is not effective. This leads to a problem of credibility and effectiveness. When speaking about the losses of human lives, I think that we should really tackle this problem more seriously. And therefore, international institutions should be reinforced. I mean, we can think of the role of WHO during this crisis that could not go any further beyond than issuing recommendations to the member states and disseminating information. The EU, in a way, is halfway of that. It's clearly an incomplete project in this regard. Decisions are taken collectively, but the fact that they need to be adopted by all 27 member states simultaneously hampers the effectiveness of these decisions that are being taken. The ECB, the European Central Bank, to give you just an example, being one single institution that can take decisions independently, has been the sole EU institution effectively acting with their decision on the 18th of March to resume the asset purchasing program. And therefore, this is the way to go. We need international organizations, multilateral partnerships that are being strengthened, that are being enforced, so that they can take the necessary decisions at the necessary time in order to respond effectively to the problems that we face. So if you allow me, I will leave it here, because I know that we are very strict in terms of time, and then I will come back with some other recommendations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Reem, and I would like also to thank the colleagues. I think I agree with the first speaker. I think I would like to thank and congratulate, in fact, the network for producing this study very, very quickly. And I think this is really a good asset. We have, until now, I think, really very few studies looking at the consequences, in fact, of this pandemic on the global world, and more particularly on our countries and on the region. In fact, the only work is done by the IMF. We tried in Tunisia with a group of colleagues to do a network of economists called Econ for Tunisia, to do also some estimate about the consequences of the crisis. But I think this is an important work, and basically having these discussions, this conversation with all the colleagues and friends around the table is also key in dealing with this issue. And I think this is probably, after probably 2008 global financial crisis, this is I think is the most important challenge the world is facing, and more particularly, in fact, if you remember the effect on Africa, at least North Africa and Africa, the effect of the 2008 crisis was not as strong as the effect of this pandemic on our countries. I limit myself to in the conversation in this first round, at least, and as I said, in fact, I'm supposed, unfortunately, to leave before the end of the session due to other commitments. I would like to highlight three main issues. The first one is the impact of the pandemic on Tunisian economy. Second is the responses of the government, and three, in fact, it's the way forward, or as we discussed, I think, is the what we could do more and better. On the first element, in fact, on the consequences, we did some estimate, and our estimates, in fact, we published them probably in the middle of March, before the 20th of March, and they were showing, in fact, some results and some, and this first publication was quite criticized in Tunisia, and a lot of people thought that was politically oriented, in fact, but I think these results were comforted, and I should say were in fact supported by the figures published by the IMF a few days ago, and our figures were less pessimistic than the IMF ones. But basically, by and large, we think that in 2020, the level of the recession is around minus 4% growth. If the total deconfinement is going to happen before the end of May, which is not the case, and most likely, in fact, the situation is going to be, the economic recession is going to be more severe. I think, just to give you an idea, this is probably in the modern history and post-colonial, post-independence era, the most severe downturn in our economy, including, in fact, probably what we have in mind is 2011, the year of the revolution, with all, how to call it, the political difficulties, and in 2011, in fact, the downturn of the economy was -2%. So we are talking almost twice the figures of 2011, and this is really the most important, in fact, economic crisis in the Tunisian economic history. We have probably 2 or 3 main crises. I think the first one was 1970, with the transition from state-dominated economy to a more liberal economy. The second one was in 1986, and this is where almost all the North African countries went through the structural adjustment programs with the debt crisis. And the last one, it's 2011, with the economic consequences of the revolutions. So the fourth one, and the current crisis, is probably the most important one. To understand, in fact, the impact or the consequences, because when you talk to people, since they don't have in mind what does it mean, -4% growth in 2020, I mean, we never, this is not part of our, how to call it, thinking, or our, the people's, including the economists. I mean, the figures become probably more, how to call it, visible when we go to the, when we went through the consequences of the impact of the crisis on the social situation, and more particularly, in fact, on the level of unemployment. From our figures, the unemployment level is quite high in Tunisia, is almost around 14%. We are expecting that this level of unemployment will go by the end of the year up to between 18 and 19%, which is huge. It's almost, how to call it, probably the most important level. So this is just to give you an idea about the economics. I can provide you with other figures. I think the results, we published all these results in a paper. We didn't want to have how to call it, a research paper. We did it for a newspaper in Tunisia, in Arabic and in French, and we presented all the results and all the estimates on different levels, for the different economic sectors. Of course, the most it's tourism and transport are the most important sector hit by the crisis. The second element, in fact, it's the I wanted to go through, and is the response of the government. In fact, like all North African countries, the government, of course, tried to respond at 3 levels. The first one is, of course, the medical response, and try to mitigate, or try at least to stop the development of the disease. And we took almost all, I mean, like Morocco, and maybe the difference, or Algeria difference, probably Tunisia was the first country to lock down the, how to call it, the air transport, etc., etc. But almost the same. But I think in the medical experience, the results, as I said, are almost 1,000 people infected, 40 40 dead, and this is by and large the situation is not that dramatic as we were expecting in the beginning of the crisis. Many people are discussing today in Tunisia why, not only in Tunisia, because we are part of the North Africa and also the how to call it, Africa, and why the crisis is not that severe as we saw in the north part of the Mediterranean. Some hypotheses are how to call it, discussed on this issue. The second element in the response of the government is the economic one. And the economic one was really to try to support, in fact, the local firms to reduce how to call it, the level of the liquidity crisis they are going through. Different measures were put in place to postpone, in fact, different payments, social security payments, to fiscal, how to call it, payments, try to accelerate, in fact, the how to call it, the delays in payment of the government or of the state to private firms to accelerate that process. Other issues, in fact, it's by and large actually also because when we did the study, we went through some comparative analysis with the North African countries. Of course, we have also some responses from the monetary. I mean, I'm more familiar with what the Moroccan and government and the Central Bank of Morocco did. It's almost the same thing, reducing the interest rate, we put in place, in fact, a guarantee fund. The government put in place a guarantee fund to make at the disposal of the firms, in fact, to help them to access to finance in this period. So these are by and large the economic measures. The social measures were, in fact, to help support the how to call the social categories, the poor or the less the poor categories, with some social disbursement and money disbursement was made. I think so. These are the policies, the action. We can come back in the details on the action, but I think what is quite important for me is the main issues or characteristics out of we could probably in looking to these policies understand. First, I think the main characteristic of this policy is really short-term responses, very emergency responses without a long-term perspective, or at least a middle-term perspective. These was some of them, in fact, was one-shot action. So I think this is one of the first challenge and the first, in fact, critics made by the in the public debate in Tunisia about this measure. The second one, I think, the second element is the difficulties of their how to call it implementation. It's sometimes, in fact, it's so difficult. You know, we have in probably in the middle in the North Africa, we are the less lucky ones, because the bureaucracy in Tunisia is the heritage of the Ottoman and the French bureaucracy. So it's probably the most difficult to deal with, and a lot of critics were made, in fact, on the condition put in place to implement these policies. And this is, I think, it was really a clear debate, and I was invited many times to how to call TVs, and I raised this issue. The third element, in fact, is really the lack of how to call it, digitalization of the economy. So we almost for everything we should, in a context of confinement, almost all we needed physical displacement of people to implement the decision. So really, compared to Morocco also, which I probably know, I think the level of digitalization of the economy, of the society, was really a huge challenge, because almost all the payment, all the disbursement had to be made by physically, and people has to go to the bank or to post offices, in fact, to get this payment done. So these are probably very quickly some of the lessons in the first, the emergency responses. Now, the way forward. The way forward, this is really, this is my last point. There is a lot of conversation and discussions going on in Tunisia, like in other countries, on how we are going to proceed, how we are going to deal. The main argument in beginning of March in the response of the government, and the fact that it was a short-term responses, was to say that we don't know the future. We don't know how the pandemic is going to develop. But I think now we have the element. So I think for our countries, I think we have two main challenges, at least for the North African country. The first one is, of course, to make sure that what we call the programme de sauvetage, emergency programs, should go, because the decisions in Tunisia and the measures were defined month by month. And I think we need to move to a longer term, means at least I was suggesting in the newspapers yesterday, and with some public discussions today, that these emergency programs should go up to the end of the year 2020 at both levels, support to the economy, to our public enterprises, and also on the social support to the people. So this, I think, is the most important one. The second one, we are discussing like others. I think we should also not think only about responding to the immediate needs and the emergency needs, but also we need to make sure that the economic policy is having a more medium and long-term perspective, and we are talking about a stimulus program. So the whole debate about the composition of the stimulus. I would like to end this conversation, Reem, and I think with 2-3 elements, and probably on the work of the network of I think the first element is really the most important one, is really if we compare what is going on, the most important one is that the colleagues, and some of them are friends, but our institutions in general are not prepared, in fact, to manage a crisis with that level. And that, I mean, my discussion with the colleagues and ministers or colleagues in charge, I think they're quiet, they don't know what to do, and they're really, and I think probably the experience of the 2008 financial crisis in Europe, in fact, created this capacity to deal with structural challenges and huge challenges. So in I don't know, Moubarack and the colleagues from Fathallah for Morocco, Moubarack for Senegal, and Her Excellency the Ambassador for Ghana should probably have views on this, but this is, I think this is a huge challenge for us, how to deal with such huge crisis, and how to make sure that the economic or the public policies are able to respond to them. I think the second one is probably, I mean, when I'm discussing in the public, having public discussion, people are discovering what the ECB is doing, the huge part of the ECB work, and other European institutions are doing. And I think, you know, sharing experiences, I think is quite, we don't have, of course, we don't have a central bank as strong as the ECB, but at least I think there is some lessons. And I think the network could help a lot in sharing the experiences and the way in which, in fact, the institutions don't think that we are so close. I think the debate is not that, how to call it, easy, more particularly, in fact, in a situation where we don't have, how to call it, the newspapers coming from Europe are not arriving anymore. So I think sharing experiences, how to do it, how to organize it, how to show how to call it, the north part of the Mediterranean is trying, in fact, to deal with this crisis, trying to respond to it. Basically, the situation today is that we are trying to deal with yesterday's instruments to respond to a very unknown, how to call it, and unprecedented, in fact, crisis. And this is, I think, the key and the center of the crisis today, trying to deal with yesterday's instrument, economic policies instrument, with a different animal, with a different crisis. And I think the network could help a lot in, I mean, yesterday I was having, Reem, you know, Midi Show. This is the most famous, how to call it, radio program in Tunisia, and I was invited in that program and assisted a lot. My sense is that the colleagues and the friends in charge and the institutions of the economic policy, of the public policy, they don't realize that we are in a different time. This is a different animal. This is not the, how to call it, this is not the low growth of 1% or 2%. This is -4. This is 18 or 19 level, 19% the level of employment. So we need to really to think differently and to understand and to really to see the lessons coming from the north. I was too long. I'm sorry for that. I'm really sorry. My apologies for my colleagues in the panel and also for the colleagues, for the participant in the seminar. But this is really my views. The situation is difficult. We were able to avoid a huge medical crisis, but in the front of us, as one of the big newspaper was putting in his first page in Tunisia today, we are in the front of economic and social tsunami. And I don't think that we are prepared from not only the financial issue, but also from an intellectual point of view, from the readiness of our tools to respond to this tsunami. So, thank you, Reem, and sorry for being long.
Thank you, Reem, and very happy to be participating in this video conference, as it has become now a fashion to do video conferences, and very happy to participate in it. Really, I would like to congratulate you, Reem, and the whole EMEA and EMNES team, because what you have done is impressive. To start to kick off the research on the 18th of March and to finalize such a huge, massive research on the 22nd of April, which is roughly 1 month. This is really impressive, and I think it was a very timely decision and outcome and output to have in our hands a dashboard of everything that is being done in the region. And I think we need it in order to be able to understand where we are going, and how we are going about it. So I think really I would like to start by congratulating the team, and it's not only just a way to enter things, but really believing that what you have done is impressive scientifically, and also from the added value perspective of whatever we are going to be building on for the near future. I would like to start by just, before maybe narrowing down my comments on Morocco for a while and then extending it to the overall thinking in the region, but to start by saying that the spread of the virus, as we have seen it since roughly December, January, follows the patterns of trade and mobilities around the world. It started in China, and so we can see that it went to Asia, which is very natural, considering the intensity of the trade and the business mobilities between China and its Asian environment. Then it spread rather massively to Europe and North America for obvious reasons of business intensity and mobilities. It is only after that that it started coming to our part of the world, mainly North Africa and probably the whole of the African continent. I'm mentioning that because A, I want to underline the pattern of spread, the disease spread and business and mobilities and human mobilities for businesses and tourism, of course, but also because time-wise, this has provided the possibility for countries like Morocco to have a capacity to perhaps react more swiftly and more rapidly than the European countries may have done at the beginning when the spread was coming into the European continent. And that has enabled a country like Morocco to take rather rapid actions. And these rapid actions have indeed provided, I would say, significant results. Just to mention the few emergency decisions that have been taken: the closing of the borders mid-March, the confinement 23rd of March, obligatory masks on April 7th. These were emergency health issues, like what Hakim was saying earlier about the emergency medical measures. There was also a willingness from the authorities to be fully transparent. And this, I think, is a very important issue, a very important dimension in the governance of such a crisis, to have a full transparency on the state of play. And I invite you to have a look at a website called le 360.ma/COVID Maroc. This, of course, linked to the Ministry of Health, this gives a daily briefing on the confirmed cases, on the tested negative, on the number of tests, on the healed and on the casualties, with daily infographics by region, in Tangier, in Casablanca, in Oujda, and so forth. And I think this transparency is essential in order, A, to communicate with the population, but also to enable all analysts to have the appropriate information. On the economic reaction, I think there has been also some emergency actions, especially by the setting in place of a special fund, a special COVID fund, which has now reached almost 4 billion euros, that has enabled the government to act on 3 main pillars. And I think here I'm echoing also what Hakim was saying earlier. The first pillar is the health infrastructure, the purchase of the necessary medical tools and medications, and the health infrastructure in general. I would like here to note, and I'm very happy that among the participants we have representatives from 2 major universities in Morocco, the University Internationale de Rabat and l'Université Euromed de Fès, because I would like to point out, and I'm sure that this is the case also in other countries, is that this crisis has seen the emergence of a stronger interaction between universities and the laboratoires de recherche and industries working together for technological innovation, industrial innovation, in order to provide, for example, masks, respiratory instruments, and so forth. I think this is a very promising area connecting industry with innovation and university. The second level of action within this special COVID fund was, of course, the support to the economy, direct support to the economy, and mainly to the SMEs. And here I will not just repeat what Hakim said, because more or less these are the same areas of action, mainly to enable companies to overcome the immediate consequences that this crisis has produced. The third pillar is, of course, to alleviate the social impact, especially towards the most vulnerable populations. But in addition to the setting of the special fund and these actions on the three pillars, the medical pillar, the economic pillar, and the social pillar, there has been the Comité de Veille Économique, which is an intergovernmental institution with the central bank being member of it, which is monitoring and being like an early warning mechanism, going through on a quasi daily basis what is going on within the markets so that we can adjust the different actions to be undertaken, but also looking at the international context, because for an open economy like Morocco, obviously, it is very linked. The national evolution and the international evolution are obviously interlinked. So this Comité de Veille, this early warning committee, is essential in the governance, in the overall governance of the crisis, because we are in a crisis in which we are not in a capacity to have a control or even to have an anticipation over all its implications. And so you need to advance also with what you know today, but also what you will learn tomorrow, and adjust policies accordingly. I want to mention two other pillars of action because I think that it is important. I mentioned the emergency actions, I mentioned the governance actions, but there's also the pillar of the social solidarity, which has been essential not only for the co-ownership by the population of the solidarity action towards solutions, but also in providing something that comes as in addition to the efforts by the government. And I think this solidarity dimension, the implication of the civil societies and everything that has been done at the social level, I think is a very important component to the governmental actions. And the fourth pillar of action is international cooperation. I think international cooperation is indeed essential, just as all the other pillars. And here I just would like to highlight two examples referring to Morocco. The first one is a very good connection with the European Union with 450 million euros financial support by the European Union to Morocco as part of the global strategy of EU support to the region. And I think this also is a good example on how international cooperation, as Roger was referring to earlier, can accompany the different efforts by the governments, but also the initiative launched by the King of Morocco towards Africa, an African initiative in order to foster, to strengthen, and to give an impulse to the cooperation in Africa. And I'm sure that my good friend Moubarack will be able to echo that as well. So this is the state of play of where we are, the different pillars of action that have been undertaken. And it is true that we can say that on the medical side, on the health side of the pandemic, although one has to continue being very cautious and very vigilant, but I dare say that we have had a rather swift and efficient response, which needs to continue being consolidated in the near future. But the figures, as this morning's briefing by the Minister of Health at 10 o'clock Moroccan time has given, the confirmed cases are 5,505. This is this morning at 10 o'clock. That means 12 European time. The number of casualties, the number of deaths is 183. So I think that if we compare those figures with the figures that we have in some European countries, you can see that the reaction, because of, I explained, the delay and the geographical tempos of the spread of the disease, has enabled us to have a rather limited effect on the population. That being said, we are, of course, very worried and very mobilized on the socio-economic impacts of what is coming. And here I would like to make a few comments. The first one is that there has been a very artistic innovations about the symbolization of the capacity of the economy to recover. So there are many scenarios. One of them is the V scenario, which is the optimistic scenario, the V, the letter V. So you go down and then you go up rather quickly. You have the U scenario, which is you go down, you stay a little bit down, and then you go up. So the U scenario. You have the very pessimistic scenario, which is the L scenario. You go down and you stay down. This is the very pessimistic scenario. And then you have one of the scenarios that one cannot exclude, although it is certainly not the most wanted, which is the W scenario, which is what if we have a second spread of the disease? And then it would be in a W. You go down, you go up, and you go down again, and then you go up again. This is what I call the challenge of the angle of the curve of whatever letter you choose. I think it is very difficult to make any projections. As time goes, we have a lot of new parameters, and I think it's very difficult to be able to put a figure as to where the economy of any given country will be at the end of December 2020. We will probably be in a better position to project something seriously, maybe by next month, maybe by end of June or something. But I don't think that as we are speaking, that we can make projections, because depending on the angle of the curve, your scenarios can have really different outcomes. And all the analysis that I have been reading recently give contradictory results. So whatever the result is, what we can say is the following, and I would like to mention 3 points. The first one is that, of course, 2020 will be a difficult year, but 2021 also. And this is what I really want to underline. I think one has to not underestimate the impacts of what is happening today on 2021. Let me give you one example, and Hakim, as a former Minister of Finance, knows it. All the fiscal implications of the low level of activities in 2020 will have a fiscal impact on the budget in 2021, because you pay your taxes of 2020 in 2021. So the loi de finance that will be prepared at the end of 2020 will have to project on the macroeconomic forecast for 2021 with the fiscal revenues of the 2020 fiscal year. And so I think that we will not have a crisis that will have macroeconomic effects only in 2020, but also in 2021. So whatever the angle of the curve is, and I hope it will be the best one, of course, for everybody, but I think that whatever projections, we need to integrate more than only the end of this year, but to see on a more medium term going to 2021, 2022, and maybe beyond. That's the first comment. The second comment is that it is very obvious that there will be a greater importance provided and given by all governments to strengthen domestic markets. Domestic markets at the level of industrial production, at the level of health infrastructure. I don't have the time to go in detail in each and every one of them. In the sector of agro-business, in order to ensure self-approvisionment of the country. But also, I would like to mention, beyond these three dimensions, the industry, the health infrastructure, education, and agro-business, I would like to mention the new areas in which I think there are important investments to be made in order to strengthen the domestic resilience of any given market. The first one is digitalization, and Hakim mentioned it. It is essential. It is an essential dimension. There is no resilience without digitalization. The second, and I'm happy that my good friend Maha Gmira from the University Euromed de Fez is in the room with us, is artificial intelligence. I think it is also a very important dimension, a very structural dimension. The third one, and I'm sorry to go rather quickly on that, is the solidarity and the social business. I believe social economy, social business, solidarity beyond its humanitarian and social dimension will become a more structural economic sector that we need to structure, we need to invest in, and it is a condition for social innovation. So these are the different dimensions on the importance of strengthening domestic markets and the domestic resilience. The third dimension that is important is, of course, the international one. And for all our countries, I'm here talking about Africa as a whole continent, our continent. The importance of exports and FDI are crucial. Our economies depend to a large extent on the capacity to export and to the capacity to attract foreign direct investment, which brings us to the essential dimension of having a closer look on the regional vision of the value chains, so that whatever Europe, for example, the EU is thinking internally towards its future in terms of new strategies, the post-COVID strategies, it needs to integrate the southern dimension, the Mediterranean and the African dimension. And I'm sure that my good friend Hamid from the Union for the Mediterranean will echo that as well. The importance of regional value chains, because even if we need to depend less on exports and FDI, nevertheless, it is an essential component of the overall domestic growth of what we can project. And so I think we need to focus on strengthening the domestic markets, but also investing on the strengthening value chains for exports and FDIs, especially within the Euro-Mediterranean African region. And this is where I would like to conclude by saying that EMEA has a very important role to play with all the other institutions that are around the table in order to continue this reflection. And again, I congratulate for this phase one of what has been done, which is a unique reference. But we now need to probably move to phase two, which is providing policy recommendations to our authorities, to the institutions, so that we can provide contributions, food for thought, food for action, in order to initiate the way forward. Let me conclude by two sentences. The first one is that there is a good news behind everything that has happened, which is that there's no more, at least from my angle, my perspective, there is no north and south. We have been faced with a challenge that has gone across the traditional lines of distribution of the global world. And I think that there is no north and south when you are talking about a health pandemic. There's only a humanity that is facing a virus, and we need to fight it together on equal footing. And each one has to learn one from the other. And I think that provides a very good opportunity for a new vision of partnership between Europe and Africa, a partnership on equal footing, and a partnership on a win-win perspective and vision, because we are faced with it together, and we will win together or we will lose together. And the final word is that I invite you to read a very interesting book that had been written a few years back by the Boston Consulting Group that all of you know, which title is How to Deal with Complexity Without Being Complicated. I think it's a very important thing. We are facing complexity, but we must not be complicated. We have to be efficient. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Rim, and thank you so much for organizing this webinar. And that goes to EMEA as well. And I want to join speakers before me who have expressed appreciation. Like Roger said, the way you have been able in a very short time to put together your research paper is very impressive. And it makes very good reading and good material for us to be able to refer to every now and then. Although the figures change, we are able to use the general headings to be able to follow developments. And that being said, I would like to quote what the president of Ghana said before I continue. He said that we know how to bring the economy back to life, but what we do not know is how to bring people back to life. And with that, we instituted very decisive containment measures in Ghana. You remember that our first test was conducted on the 10th of March. Results came in by 12th of March, 2 confirmed cases, and immediately we went down to close the borders, land, sea, air borders, stopped all incoming flights. Those who came in within the time that we had to close were all mandatorily quarantined at the cost of government, which was quite costly, but it has paid off, because out of those who were quarantined mandatorily, about 1,000 plus people, I think about 80 to 90% of them are tested positive. So it was a very good measure government put in place. And then going forward from there, the lockdown in the major cities, not the country generally, but major cities in the countries, 5 major cities, lockdown measures and mobility restrictions were instituted. So as we speak for Ghana, you would hear all out of COVID, you would hear some good sound bites coming from Ghana, being the first this, the first that, which is very encouraging. Our case count now is 3,091 as of today, 10 o'clock GMT, because we've adopted very, very aggressive methods of testing. we are, as we say, we are ahead of the virus. We just, anybody who tests positive, then the immediate contact tracing is put in place. We don't wait for the person to show any symptoms, but straight ahead, all the contacts are traced, they are tested, then those who test positive are isolated, quarantined, and then treated. So it has been a consistent method of surveillance. And we have come out to be the first African country to test right now we've tested over 130, almost 140,000 people so far between March and May, beginning of May this year. And our recovery rate has been quite impressive because of the early identification of infected people and then the treatment that has been meted. Our morbidity rate is just out of the 3,091, we have 18 people who have died at this morning. And it's comorbidity, that's how we would say it, 84% comorbidity, because all these people had underlying conditions, medical conditions. And 11 of these 18 were over 60 years old, and only the youngest person being 15 years old. So you can see that the morbidity, it was due to the underlying measures, because those who are infected are quickly treated. Now, moving from there, I would like to also talk about how, that's how we've managed the pandemic so far. And then the social interventions that government has made, we were able to quickly mobilize the vulnerable people and those in need, and they were fed daily during the 3-week lockdown period. There was daily food packages made available, electricity, water, these are the very crucial utilities. Bills were suspended for everyone across the country from March to date, as we speak, March, April, May. And then those who are on the frontline workers will have also enjoyed free insurance, enhanced insurance from government, and also their taxes on their salaries have been waived. So government has put in very swift recovery packages for the public. What is important is that the water and electricity bills were waived for 3 months for all. Then another thing that government was able to do was to deploy drones. I mean, we're the first African country to do that. We already use the drones in our medical health industry, but we quickly turned that to help in the testing of the vigorous testing. So the drones were deployed to fly the test around from very remote areas in the country to the centers where the testing were being conducted. So it helped also to for the very swift treatment measures that could be put in place. I will also now speak about what we think that should be done. Our president has been insisting that we have an African approach to the development of our vaccines, because of the way medically it has been proven that the mutation process of the virus. So in Africa, we should not just copy blindly, but also try what I have said has come out of this COVID is the beauty of what we have on our continent. We have been able to come together, like Fathallah said, a lot of things have come out of what people can do for our countries on the continent. We also have new innovations. We have people who have come up with local ventilators, people who have come up with different methods of solar washing hand basins that dispense soap and then water by laser detection. So it's brought out a lot from us. I don't want to put in any blame measures, finger pointing measures. I think that, as Rim has said, this is unprecedented. It's been very difficult for governments, both developed and developing countries, have tried to grapple with this. What is important is the relations between governments. Although we've all been faced with this pandemic, from where I sit, what I thought was good was that relations bilaterally and multilaterally have been enhanced. People have listened, even if others think that responses were late, but at least measures are being put in place and the way forward is being discussed. Locally, what are our challenges, which I see also speaking for Ghana and probably the ECOWAS region? I'll wait for Lo to also add his voice. It's the technology, the challenges in education, especially, because we have a standstill in education. The schools had to close down, and what is important now is how to keep the education system running virtually. And those in the remote areas, if they have access to technology or good internet, we have to conduct studies in those areas to see where we have shortfalls and where the gap can be closed when we get back into the main school stream. What is also a plus sign for Ghana is that the fintech industry had been really fully developed and quite robust. There's a lot of mobile banking, and therefore sending monies around the country was not a difficult thing, which also helped in the way that the pandemic was managed. Having said that, I would also like to touch on a few things that I picked from other speakers who have spoken before me. What is the governance issues? We have seen in Africa that, or in Ghana, let me speak for Ghana, because the transparency of the governments, the briefings have been daily, as said, and they've been very measured and detailed. And also the periodic briefings that have been done by the heads of states themselves, because we are in a region where you have to hear the voice of your head of state. So that has also been encouraging, adding to the daily briefings that we get from the Ministry of Health and Information. We also had the revival of our textile industry. Now we are producing PPEs, which we export around our sub-region, and the masks, which is also a very good thing, because 5 years down the line, our textile industries, I know one very big textile factory that had shut down, but they are all up and coming now. So out of the ashes, we are seeing the rising of good things. Impact on the economy is very, very dire. I mean, our currency has depreciated between March and May now by 7% against the US dollar. And we just hope that we don't get a further decline, because this will affect inflation, which we made a lot of gains on, became from double figures to single figure inflation. And then we were projected by the World Bank and IMF to be the fastest growing economy in 2020. And all of a sudden, we have moved from 6.8% that was projected to 2.5% as at during the contagion period. So these are the economic impact that we have suffered. So I would like to also state that the government has, I'm a champion of the informal sector in Africa. Africa, we do a lot of informal trading. It's about 80% the medium to small scale industries. And what is important here is that for Ghana, the government has put in place a 600 million cedi stimulus package. So this will take care of the micro, small, and medium enterprises. And the various stakeholders are looking at the eligibility criteria. And of course, again, technology plays a part here. A portal has been created where all legible industries will be able to apply for to access the stimulus package. And as we speak, tomorrow our cabinet is going into a retreat, a 3-day retreat, specifically on COVID, the impact of COVID on the economy, and recommendations will be made. And next week, we will see very concrete measures.
Yes, thank you, Rim. I will try in 5 minutes to summarize what we are doing in Senegal. It's very similar to what I already heard from Hakim and from Sijilmassi and from Ghana. So basically, all countries, they have the 3 parts of the governmental plan. The first one is the medical part. So, and this is the most urgent need, is how to stop the epidemic. And so far, we can say in Senegal, we do not have what people was expected, this exponential curve. So by today, we have 1,492 people that were infected. Out of this, we have only 562 already recovered, and only 13 deaths. So the percentage of deaths is below 1%. So we are not in a crisis. And also, it's not all the region have not yet been infected. We have 11 regions out of 14. And we have more clusters than a state in every city in the country. So Dakar, the capital, has the most percentage. Almost half of those infected live in Dakar. And the second city is also important in the percentage of infection. So our policy is to lower the rate of infection and to accelerate the recovery. And I can say that for now, 38% of the people infected were recovered. And in the beginning, it was better. Beginning of April, our rate was 62%. So people were starting talking about the Senegalese miracle. But in April, we expected new infection. That's why our recovery rate has been now lowered, and now we have 38%. But we think that by the end of May, we will be close to what we used to have in the beginning. But we will not reach 62%, but I think we'll be much more than 50%. Because yesterday from today, in fact, we are experiencing a new phase in our development of the epidemic. We can say in March, from March to beginning of April, it was curve going up, and then we experienced a period where, a very short period, maybe 10 days, where every day we have good news, no new infection at all, maybe 3 or 5 per day. But from 12th of April, we start experiencing a very, very rapid progression of the case. But from today, we have reached what we expect of being the maximum in the speed of the infection. And so we expect the days coming to be able to declare that by end of May, Senegal has again controlled the progression of the epidemic. What we do is like many countries are doing, but we do not test everybody. We concentrate our effort around the case. So when we discover a case, we send people and we identify all the contacts. Sometimes you can have 140 contacts. I don't know if one country is doing like us. One contact, I just read from the press today, 150 contacts. And all the 150, we isolate them from the day one. We discover them for 14 days. And we do testing every day. The 14 days, or from the beginning, we will just observe them, but there is a certain level we start testing them. After 14 days, we declare them positive or negative, and so they can go back to their home. So far, we have 8%, 7 to 8%, those tested becoming positive. But that does not mean that the infection rate in the country is 8%. I think it's below 0.2% for other statisticians. This is my guess. So this is our main strategy: is working around any new case, isolating the contact, and giving them treatment. And we are using also chloroquine from the beginning. As you know, there is a big discussion on what is the best protocol. We use chloroquine and azithromycin, and we are very, very happy with the success we have had in the treatment. And what I can say again is behind this medical plan, we have also a socio-economic plan. We are distributing food for half of the household. Half, I don't say 10%, I say half. We have 2 million households, so 1 million household will receive food and sugar, rice, etc. And we have also an economic plan, and the economic plan, like in Morocco or Tunisia, we are giving a fiscal ease for the enterprise. They are not paying, say, for the next 3 months their fiscal duties, and also we are paying back very fast the loans the government has taken from the private sector. Some sectors are receiving subsidies, tax subsidies, and as Ghana mentioned, now we pay also much attention to the informal sector, because this is a very important part of the economy. And generally, nobody talk about them, and they don't have voice. So we are experiencing some funding project to give them small fund in order to be able to work within this context. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Reem. First of all, I would like to echo all the speakers before me as well on the outstanding work and the rapidity in which you have reacted in producing the report you have reported. I must say that it was a wish come true for us, because only a few days before we were discussing that we are thirsty to see such information, and we found out the report that you have provided us. So a big word of thank you again. Naturally, my views will be more related to the UFM region, but allow me that before I proceed, I would like to stress a very important message in the name of the entire UFM family. The crisis, as we all know, is humanitarian in first place. It is true that the socio-economic impact is devastating, but we also express our deepest condolences to the victims and their families, and applaud the courage and the sacrifice of the workers at the front line for the good of us all. I am sure that we all know someone who knows someone who has been affected in a way or another. The impact of the pandemic, as you all said, is uneven in the region and worldwide. Unfortunately, though, the UFM region is some of the most adversely affected countries in the world in terms of mortalities, contagion, and expectedly the economic landscape. In order to put things into perspective, and this is my opinion, I believe we can agree that the protection, confinement, and preventive measures to combat the pandemic were rather asymmetric across the region. We can all give a testimonial on that based on the interventions before me. And based on the local situation in the territory of each country, and therefore the reaction of each was more driven by the national interest to protect its own population. As such, no magical formula exists, and it is too early, in my opinion, again, to evaluate the measures taken. Let's take the example of France, for instance. They now bring back the first corona case to the 27th of December. This means that the virus may have arrived in Europe almost a month earlier than previously thought. Indeed, international establishments such as the World Health Organizations and others were constantly issuing recommendations on their views on how to better react. However, implementation remains, of course, a sovereign decision of each country, with no one-size-fits-all sort of package of measures. In the Southern Mediterranean, as we have learned at least two of them now, and from the report, many countries cannot afford a total lockdown. And without going into the specific examples all mentioned in the EMEA report, I do believe that these countries are acting and reacting to their best according to the societal and economic reality they have. Another point I want to make is that we will be living with this virus for some time. We all know it. It has been mentioned even when we talked about 2021. Therefore, the faster we assimilate the so-called new normal, the better it will be. But beyond the measures in place and in more pragmatic terms, socially and economically, the UFM region will feel the weight of an ensuing global recession already at our doorstep. And new formula for multilateralism and globalization would need to be developed. Moreover, new business models and socio-economic culture would have to emerge with a focus on creating more resilient communities and economies. Therefore, more than any other time, a regional vision to orchestrate the path ahead is fundamental and indispensable for proceeding towards realizing our vision of a more integrated region. And here I would like to stress that when we speak about deconfinement, it could not be done in isolation of one another. Again, I repeat what has been said before me as well, that it is the time that we act together for common and global solutions. It is very difficult to see that we might soon have a problem in crossing the borders of one country to the other, and more dangerously, even from within the same territory of the same country. Coming to the UFM Secretariat itself, I am proud to say that we have not been a mere spectator in the regional panorama in the wake of the pandemic crisis. Since day one, we have been intensifying our consultation in-house and with our strategic partners and stakeholders and member states in order to identify the angles of engagement that would accompany the global and regional efforts to handle the crisis. We have established a permanent task force coordinating all our responses to the crisis. Moreover, we have immediately revisited our annual program for the current year in order to recalibrate and tailor the relevant activities to the post-pandemic recovery and to promote civic protection, urban resilience, social dialogue, digital transformation, job creation, among others. I can't agree any more with what His Excellency Fathallah Sijilmassi mentioned. A very recent example as well is that only 10 days after the lockdown in Spain, we have convened the meeting of the UFM Regional Platform on Research and Innovation with the aim of scaling up the actions among the member states of the UFM in order on research and innovation pertinent to the fight against the virus. Similar endeavors took place and others are underway to promote the collaboration on such strategic areas as water and sanitation, circular economy, and boosting labor markets and intra-regional trade. Last but not least, it definitely includes our own annual UFM Regional Forum, which gathers the foreign ministers of the UFM. And we again have recalibrated the scope of the event in order to match the reality in which we are living and allow for an evident discussion related to the repercussions of the current crisis. Needless to say, the UFM Secretariat works closely with partner institutions, and we have made available a section on our website on the COVID response, which includes all our activities. So I wouldn't go in them into details, but I would be happy to answer any questions. Finally, let me stress again our commitment to the post-pandemic recovery, and the coming days will unveil even more efforts that are still not seasoned enough to present now, but which we'll gladly share in the coming weeks. I end with a quote: on the conduct of each depends the fate of all. Let us take this as the guiding principle for our moral compass for the time to come. I hope I have been confined to the time given to me. Thank you, Reem, and thank you all.